we're going to have some cake afterwards. So if we forget to say that, there will be cake. We thought as a special kindness to you, we'd let you digest your lunch before dessert, and then we'd have the program so that you could enjoy the cake afterwards. So there will be some more time to visit with Elizabeth and James at that point. If you didn't get a chance to, there is a frame out there if anybody just wants to put their John Hancock on that and wish them well. One of the gifts that we want to be giving them that's personalized by the congregation. And then there were also some pages on the tables. If you didn't sit at a table, you might not have seen them. But just if you wanted to write a little bit of a longer note to Elizabeth and James, we will put that together in a scrapbook fashion for them and make sure we get that to them before they leave. So without further ado, we are here to celebrate ESO and what she has meant to us over the past 7 years. It's hard to believe it's been 7 years, but it has. And we thought that we would take a little bit of a different tact at this and maybe put it in the context of a story. So here we go. Once upon a time, there was a young woman named Elizabeth. She was a pastor, and she loved the Lord with all of her heart. One day, she found out from her colleague Meredith that Brunswick Church was searching for a temporary supply pastor. Meredith knew of Brunswick because she had served there as an intern many years ago. She encouraged Elizabeth to see if God was calling her to this place. Elizabeth heard from God to respond to the call, and that is how she came, without her husband James, to visit with the elders of Brunswick Church the night of January 11th, 2011. Now, it just so happened that there was a winter storm brewing that night. Shocker, I know. And so Elizabeth and James had decided that she should really take this journey alone so that she could drive back to New Jersey directly after the meeting to avoid them both getting snowed into this little town of Brunswick. When Elizabeth had returned, you're remembering that, aren't you, James? Not all the details made it into the story. When Elizabeth had returned safely to her home that evening, she spent the next few days seeking wisdom from God and was rewarded with affirmation to accept the call. She immediately contacted Dave Oster, our residing clerk of session, on Saturday, January 15th, 2011, with her response. And now we're going to invite Dave to share with us a few of those memorable moments.
This feels kind of strange. I'm not usually one who speaks first at these type of meetings and stuff. I'm usually the one at the end reading the minutes, putting everybody to sleep. So they asked me to speak first so that I can put you to sleep now. I asked Allison how long you want me to speak. She said, everybody's going to be in a stupor. You can speak as long as you want it. First impressions. Boy, that's a tough one because it's a long time ago, and I remember that session leading up to this was in a deadlock. We had two candidates that the pastor nominating committee had selected and had thought were very good candidates, and but the team couldn't make a decision one way or the other. So they gave that little decision to Session. And since Elizabeth has been hired as a temporary supply pastor, it was Session who would ultimately make that decision and hire her. And so we had the two candidates come and join us, Session on evenings, and I was not able to attend the first time that Elizabeth came to meet with Session, but I was able to attend the one with the other candidate. And so it came down to a couple weeks later when Session discussed this, and without even meeting Elizabeth, but reading her resume and talking to other people who had met her, in my own mind, I had decided that she was the better candidate of the two. And so Session offered that position to Elizabeth, and she very much accepted it. And I must say that when she first came, she was on the quiet side. Her and her husband moved into this little apartment in Troy and didn't have a whole lot with them, and seemed to have a world of experience in different areas. And so I think we were all hopeful that this was going to work out well. And I believe that within a couple of times that Elizabeth first came and worked and was helping in worship, it occurred to me that this little lady was quite talented and that she had great poise, and it was hard for me to believe that this was her first real pastorate. She brought a lot of confidence and spoke well. You didn't have this sense that she had the first-time jitters of being in front of a congregation. And that was a real amazing impression that has lasted with me for all this time, that she really fit in well, came here and made a place for herself, and then led us through some very difficult times. It is a testament to her upbringing and the training that she had as a Presbyterian pastor at a seminary, and her overall world experiences of doing several other things before becoming a pastor. So my first impression was this was a little church mouse that had come to a kind of larger size Presbyterian church, and we hoped that she wasn't going to get swallowed up and not be able to do much, but she really surprised us all and became quite a pastor that we probably, all of us, will probably not forget, and we are happy and glad that she has served with us and served with us well. Thank you.
Thank you, Dave. So the next step for Elizabeth upon answering the call was to return to Brunswick on January 29th to be examined by the presbytery for her call and membership into the presbytery, of which she passed with flying colors. She then traveled on to have her ordination service in her home church, First Presbyterian in Seattle, Washington. And Elizabeth and James then began plans to move from New Jersey to Troy, with the tentative starting date being March 17th, a very fitting date for Elizabeth Shen O'Connor. Elizabeth, however, officially started on the 22nd. I just thought the 17th sounded better. And began to settle into her pastoral role and start the work that God had called her to at Brunswick Church. While it was not always clear to her how long she was to be here, she knew God had placed her here to help this church through a great time of transition, and there was much work to be done. The great transition was in relation to Harry Heinz, the senior pastor, who was to retire in September of 2012, after faithfully serving the congregation for more than 37 years. A pastoral nominating team was to form and begin the search starting in May. Elizabeth then became a key liaison to Albany Presbytery, whom she was also undertaking a transition in a new form of government, otherwise known as the NFOG, which allowed the ruling elders on session the opportunity to set their own vision and mission and put together its own manual of operations, otherwise known as the MOO. Elizabeth led this effort over several years with much enthusiasm and diligence to see it to its completion. Are we on the hymn now? Please join us. Are you ready to go, Dave? As we sing one of Elizabeth's favorite hymns, Be Thou My Vision. So after Harry's retirement, the hope was that Brunswick Church was to be nearing the end of its transition. As the nominating team selected a new pastor, Elizabeth was beginning to ask if her call was coming to an end. However, God responded once more to affirm Elizabeth's place and revealed that the true transition was only just beginning. In fact, this transitional period continued for the next 5 years. During this period, Elizabeth and James shared the news that they were expecting their first child. Elizabeth, finding herself in a different kind of limelight, and we know how much she loves the limelight, graciously accepted gifts and advice during her huge congregational baby shower in May 2013, 1 month before Max O'Connor came into this world. James was key to providing her the support that she needed through maternity leave to her return as part-time pastor. Eventually, Elizabeth returned to a full-time pastoralship. At the end of the first quarter of 2014, Elizabeth and James announced the awaiting of their second child. At the approach of this second child's due date, somewhere around Christmas Eve 2014, Elizabeth found herself in the role of our solo pastor and acting head of staff. It was truly God's timing and oversight to ensure that she made it through all 5 Christmas Eve services as all anxiously awaited the arrival of the new interim pastor, Scott DeBlock. Lulu Shen O'Connor was born in December 2014. It was December, right? December 29th, 2014. With our new interim in place, she and James were able to enjoy a leave of absence to love and nurture their latest arrival to the family. She returned full-time in April 2015 after the completion of her second maternity leave.
And I'm here to talk about that wonderful time when Lou arrived into this wonderful world. I remember that Christmas. I remember she's standing up there, our very capable, our very small, organized pastor. She was leading the worship at all the Christmas Eve services, telling the story of Jesus' birth, while she herself appeared to be about to go in labor any moment. We all breathed very slowly for those 5 services. But all year, Eso had been steadfastly laboring through the challenges of being our sole pastor during a very difficult time. So standing on her feet for several Christmas Eve services must have been difficult, but she just did it. And we all breathed a sigh of relief when the last service was over. But she wasn't going to be there the next weekend. Now, she had been so busy healing the service, healing the congregation, and working with us all, that she and James really didn't have a plan for this next baby. And every week, Connie Boyce and I said, you need a plan. You need a plan what's going to happen, because Max almost arrived before she got to the hospital. So we developed a plan. James was to call one of us, and we'd immediately go to their house at the first contraction. I was talking to James one evening, and he said, she's doing good, she's doing good. She's not having any contractions, but she's feeling a little funny. Well, my hair color bears the truth that I have a little experience, and feeling funny to me didn't sound good. I said, I'm on my way. It takes about 20-25 minutes for me to get from my house to her house. And I didn't stop for any red lights. The troopers wouldn't have liked my speed. And I got there about 12 minutes later. And there was only one car in the driveway. So I went up to the door and I knocked and I opened the door and walked in, and there was this strange, large man sitting in their living room, staring at the door with his arms folded. He looked so uncomfortable, capable, but uncomfortable. And I think he was very happy that Max was a sleeping baby. James and Eso had just moved to this house. They didn't know anybody. So when this funny feeling became less funny and become more urgent, and they needed to leave to St. Pete's, James ran across the street to a completely strange house. Didn't know this neighbor at all. Now, you have to understand, these are capable people who organize and are planning every minute of their lives. So James ran across the street and said to Mr. Hemian, explained the situation and said, my baby's sleeping, I just need somebody to sit there until the lady from church gets there. So he came across, he did his job, but you could tell he just was not comfortable. So I walked in and I saw this man. I knew immediately what happened. And he said, you're the church lady? And I said, I'm your replacement. So he left, and I think you just got to the hospital and Lou appeared, so it's a good thing the funny feeling turned a little more urgent when it did. The moral of the story is you can be strong, you can be gifted, you can be capable and organized, but God and nature have their own timing. They just made it. And Lou is she's just a blessing to this whole church, and I'm going to miss her. Now, I've also had an opportunity to babysit a few times, and I just have so many good stories. But the one I remember mostly is the night that I always brought a treat with me. And Max, before he went to bed, Max is the great negotiator, and he said, I need to hide these. And I said, why do you need to hide the cookies? Because my daddy will eat them.
Who knew? We need to hear more Gail Swoda stories, I think. So during these family transitions, there were also major changes in staff and committees that required Elizabeth's time and talents in the area of pastoral care and deacons, spiritual formation, training for elders, worship and music coordination and planning, TLC, staff oversight, the list goes on. So in that vein, I think we have a few people who want to talk to some of these areas. Bill Henderson, you ready?
Like most of you, I could tell a lot of stories about Elizabeth. And like most of you, I love her and appreciate her gifts and her involvement here in the church. But I just want to give you one recent story that I think shows, beyond any shadow of a doubt, the kind of woman that Elizabeth is and the kind of pastor she is. Earlier last year, when we realized that of all things, playground that is behind this building was decrepit and had to be completely torn down, we decided that we would have it replaced. But there needed to be a group that was going to do that, and Elizabeth stepped in to chair a committee to replace the playground. But here's what makes all of this so remarkable. Elizabeth realized that over the years, we as a congregation had not been as thoughtful and positively interacting with the TLC staff and the families that were there. And she saw it as an opportunity to build bridges between the church and TLC. And the committee she put together also sought to accomplish that. Now, I have to say as a side point, and Elizabeth, you just have to own up to this, she did visit every playground in the Capital District. She had her children test them out. So what you see out back is a product not only of a joint effort, but also of Elizabeth's enthusiasm for playgrounds. And might I add just one other thing. In her contacts and her work, she was able to establish a relationship with a foundation that provided the last bit of funding that we needed to complete that job. That's the kind of person Elizabeth is.
Thank you, Bill. And Kevin Ware. Where are you, Kevin Ware?
Never heard that one before. I got a couple little things. So when Elizabeth came to Brunswick, she told several people that she thought that children don't really like her. And we all just said, that's interesting. But years later, obviously, we can confirm that not only do kids love Elizabeth, she's a mentor and a role model to many of the children in this church, including my own, including your two, that you didn't have at the time when you thought children may not like you. But you were wrong. And Mr. James, as many of the kids call you, you're also a favorite, and we're going to miss you very much, along with Max and Lou. I've spent many, many hours in meetings with Elizabeth. There are some in this room that have spent even more than that, but I've spent quite a few. And over the years, on several occasions, somebody in a meeting makes a statement that's either upsetting or inflammatory or just maybe not the best idea. And in true Elizabethan fashion, Elizabeth would always just nod, lean back, and say something to the effect of, okay, well, let's put that aside for right now. I'm not sure that's a good direction to head in. Let's move back to the original topic. I'm really going to miss your ability to keep cool no matter what is said at a meeting, no matter what happens, no matter what people do. It's incredible. In closing, I would like to give you back some of the advice you've given us over the years. And this is coming back. These are from you, but they're for you. God has gifted you for this. You can do this. In fact, you are already doing this. Don't let fear dictate what you do, what you decide, or what you try. And keep growing and discovering your gifts. You're only scratching the surface of what you can do.
Thank you, Kevin. Let's see, Tammy Borland. I'm hearing on the left side here.
Yeah, that's a tough act to follow. So I think over the years, many of us have come to know Elizabeth through her pastoral care. And I've been fortunate enough to not need a lot of pastoral care. But my most memorable time with Elizabeth was when I really needed it. I was recovering from surgery, and in that sort of anesthetic fog where your brain isn't functioning that well. And I had the added bonus that my eyes had swelled shut. So if I opened them for a fraction of a second, it was excruciating. It hurt to talk because I had been intubated. And in the grand scheme of things, I know this really isn't much, but in my own little world, I was feeling very vulnerable and rather disoriented. So I'm not sure when, but Elizabeth arrived, and all I could think about in the moment was how Saul must have felt. Now, Elizabeth didn't say anything about persecuting her people, but here I was feeling alone, vulnerable, and basically blind. And there was this beautiful voice of compassion, kindness, and serenity who was just sitting next to me, being present, and just making me know everything would be all right. So while I know Elizabeth isn't the voice of God, I know she's been a messenger of his for many of us. You personified his love, his peace, and his healing to me and to so many of us throughout these years. Thank you.
Thank you, Tammy. So with all of the challenges in all of these areas, Elizabeth grew in her abilities and gained much respect and gratitude from her congregation. In her pastoral role over the entire 7 years, she officiated 20 baptisms, 4 weddings, and 40 funerals. And she also mentored many individuals in their faith walk through confirmation, membership, and gateway class offerings. And we have some of those mentees here today. So Tom, who do we start with? Hayden? Gwen?
Pastor Elizabeth has been influential in my life and spiritual journey. She has helped me through a believer's baptism, and she has also guided me through a confirmation class. She has helped me and many others grow in their faith. Thank you for always being there and being patient as I learn about my faith and my Savior.
I'm going to miss the Shen Connors a lot when they leave because Miss Elizabeth has been an amazing pastor. It is hope.
God my feet. I remember that I had wanted to take communion, so my dad brought me to Miss Elizabeth's office, and she explained it to me in a way that was really helpful, so I could understand the importance of communion and why we take it. Also, Mr. James has run alongside me when we were doing a run that he told us about because he works at Fleet. I really love helping him keep track of Max and Lou. The reason why I first found out that they were going to leave was because when Max came to church, he said to me, "I'm sorry, Aiden, but we're going to leave you." And I was like, okay. And Mr. James said that they were moving. Whenever I come into the nursery after service, Lou runs up to me, yes, Aiden, and hugs me. I'm going to be really sad when you leave, and I was glad that I found out that my sister had a track meeting this morning because I got to work in the nursery for the last time Mr. James is working in the nursery.
And we know Mayor Story had something to say, but unfortunately she's not feeling well. She's under the weather. Please join us for Elizabeth's next selection, Come Thou Fount of Every Blessing. as a new pastoral nominating team formed. They eventually recommended Henry for the new senior pastor in March 2017. Elizabeth and Henry together then began to build a new foundation and future vision for Brunswick Church. So at this time, Henry, I'd like to invite you up to say a few words.
I'll go to the podium. This is my usual spot, so. But I've got to tell you, first impressions. I remember when I was interested in taking the call here and finding out the details and coming, my first impression of Elizabeth was, wow, she's organized. Because I'd called and I talked to Scott and he was helpful, and then I figured out the person to go to, though, was Elizabeth, because I'd ask for some material and she'd get me it, and it was back and forth. And I was impressed by her organization. You know what? Let me turn this off and let's just go to Mike here. Now I should be fine? Okay. All right. All right, I'll just use a handheld. This is good. No, I guess the biggest, what I can say about Elizabeth in my time, my first impressions, because this has been the first year I'm coming up on my anniversary here, and it will be Elizabeth's anniversary to start her church. I think I set a good example. She'll start her church on the same Ash Wednesday that I did in many ways. But my impressions of Elizabeth have been, I've worked with a lot of other colleagues over time, but she's everything an associate pastor should be and nothing more. What I mean by that is she does everything she's supposed to do. And at no time in the course of that, because of her grace, her skills, and her own force of personality and character, she's never taken any authority that she's not supposed to. She's taken more responsibility than she's supposed to. She owns things that no one should, not even God, I think, at times. Because she has a deep heart. But she, in her character, has never been one for her own glory or for her own ends or for her own promotion. The things I learned about Elizabeth were I can always depend on her. I got to make sure that I don't give her too much, because this is what I get. Can you do this? Yes. Can you do this? Yes. I don't get many no's from her. And it's a wonderful thing. And I've worked with people who aren't like her. And I've been blessed to have someone like Elizabeth to help me start my journey well here. And I'll miss that, because she is, like I said before, my good right hand. She is someone I can always depend on. And she comes through in the clutch so often. And she makes me look better, which is really helpful. But I think that's true. But that's true of her character. And James is the often silent partner who makes it all possible. But I know how much he does too, just as Ann is for me. But you guys are a pair, and I will so miss you guys. I know you'll do well. And I know we've said many, many times. I'm so glad for the church in Richland. But Richland. But I'm going to feel your loss, and especially at the end of the month when trying to organize worship. But and all the other things that don't get noticed around here that make everything move so smoothly at Brunswick, and I will miss that. But I'll miss my friend most, my friend and colleague. So.
So after the months passed, Elizabeth again asked that question. Is her call coming to an end? This time, the Lord said, yes. Well done, good and faithful servant. I desire you to answer a new call that will bring you and James closer to your family and your roots. It's time for you to move on. Her congregation, while sad to see her go, rejoiced in the plan that God had for her. And as a token of their appreciation, they bestowed her with several gifts, tokens of their love for her, James, Max, and Lulu. So let's see, Ginny and Judy and Jan. Oh, the 3 J's. Well, not really, Ginny or a G, but sounds good.
Finished, but it will be finished. We hope it will bring you warm memories of your time with us at Brunswick Church. And if there's anyone who has not signed it, I have pens, and you can still sign. I have a table set up by the water fountain in the back.
Elizabeth, as you know, we have a group of knitters and one crocheter who knit prayer shawls every other week. And we have one that we want to give to you and hope that as you wear it around your shoulders, you'll feel our love and you'll be with us.
Hi. you two need to come up. I'm not going to stand up here by myself. So I'm going to start with you, Elizabeth. I'm just going to take this out. It's going to be much easier. I don't know what else we can add to all those things that have been said. Your depth as a person and the dimensions that we continue to discover just seem to be boundless. And you, James, as her partner, are just an amazing man, a man of much mystery. We'll get to that in a minute. But we so appreciate your time here. And I personally just think this has been the longest temporary employee we have ever had at Brunswick. You came for, I think, a relatively short time of transition, and then you were going to consider. Well, the time of transition just went on and on and on. And we thank you for being there with us. And we thank you for all that you've meant and the differences that you've made in our lives. And as you leave from the congregation to you, hopefully useful for your new home. And we just thank you so much for all you will continue to mean to us as we continue to grow, as you have helped shape us over the years. James, has anyone ever asked themselves the question, why does James run? I used to run. I now have a broken toe and a surgeried foot, so I don't run anymore. I don't know that I've ever heard you say why you run, but I know you run in like even cold weather, which to me is just beyond belief. I can remember times when I would say to Elizabeth several years ago, well, where's James? Well, he's coming to meet me here at the church. Well, don't you have the car? Yeah, he's running. From downtown Troy to here, yes. Oh, that's nothing. Okay. And other times I would say, where's James? Oh, he's going to where? He's on his way to work. Don't you have the car? Yes, he's running from Troy to Albany. So, okay. So I don't know why, personally, James isn't running to Washington. I don't know why. Are you taking the plane with the family, or I still don't know why James runs. So the last few days I've been pondering this a little more, and I'm thinking, well, maybe it's to keep up with Elizabeth. And then I'm thinking, she's pretty serene, you know. I don't think she's really that fast. Oh, it must be to keep up with Max and Lou, who I know keep you on your toes. I've seen it firsthand. Then I thought maybe he's just running to get away from the cold because I looked up the temperature this morning in Richland and Kennewick, and today's high is 39 and their low is 30. So I'm thinking you're going to be in a much more temperate space when you get there. So we found out, through Elizabeth's help, that there is a wonderful running store in Kennewick called Runner Soul. I am now new best friends with the owner, Scott. He's looking forward to meeting you. And Scott supplied us with a gift certificate for you to use when you get there to help you on your running way once you're settled. So, and James, thank you for being part of our family. We love you.
And so, the story of Elizabeth comes to an end. Or is it the beginning? As a choir of angels raise their voices, Henry will then commission Elizabeth and James and Max and Lulu, who are not here, to their new call. So long, Elizabeth. We love you with all of our hearts. And I think we're ready for the anthem.
Can I have Elizabeth and James come up over here, please? And I like that we have a number of special guests here, all who are very special, but especially the presbytery folks. Could you come up and lay hands on these two as we commission them? We thought about asking them to speak, but having more pastors talk today would have been for a longer program, and we got some playoff games to go to. No. But many of these, I know, have ministered with Elizabeth longer than I have, and they're all, we just all want you to do well, both of you, for you both are going off in this ministry. Know that you've been called to a specific task, a specific purpose, but we're all one people called to his ministry, but Elizabeth and James. May you be blessed to be a blessing to those in Richland as you've blessed us here. You touched so many lives, and you've grown so many folks, and planted so many seeds. And we thank you. And we know God will continue to bless you as you go forward. Your whole family, Max and Lou, and know that you are carried in our hearts for all eternity. Go today knowing the love of our Father, his Son, and the Holy Spirit. And you will be blessed as you've been a blessing. Amen.
Amen.
Thank you, everyone. So, as I said earlier, there'll be time to talk with Elizabeth and James. We've got some cake that's getting prepared for everyone. And don't forget, if you haven't signed a note or signed the frame, please do so. Thank you all for coming.